All right, welcome everybody. I'm Rabbi Micah Streifer. I am the director of La Asok. And first of all, I want to wish you an early Chag Sameach as Shavuot begins tomorrow. And in honor of Shavuot, which is the festival of learning, of Torah, of cheesecake, which we don't have to offer you today, and also of, in a way, the festival of celebration of conversions. We celebrate the story of Ruth. We're thrilled to welcome Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz to discuss with us the topic today of should Jews seek converts. Let me just read a quick bio of Rabbi Hugenholtz, and then I'm going to invite you to say the blessing for study with me as we begin our session. Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz is the spiritual leader of Agudas Achim Congregation in Coralville, Iowa. I've been there. It's a beautiful little congregation. Born in Amsterdam and raised in southern Spain, Rabbi Hugenholtz grew up navigating languages, cultures, and identities. That global upbringing continues to shape her rabbinate, expansive, open-hearted, and attentive to the many ways people find their way into Jewish community. That is a perfect way for us to start this discussion. Let me invite you to momentarily unmute yourself so that we can say together the blessing for study, and then we'll over to Rabbi Hugenholtz to lead us in our discussion. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu melech
Eloheinu, melech
haolam
haolam,
asher
asher
kiddushanu
kiddushanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav,
v'tzivanu
tzivanu
la'asok
la'asok
b'divrei Torah.
b'divrei Torah.
Blessed is the Eternal, whose mitzvot, whose commandments make us holy, and who commands us to immerse or engage in words of Torah. Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz, please.
Hi, everyone. And as I like to call Shavuot, happy Convert to Judaism Day. It's very nice to be here. And you will learn a little bit about me as I go along teaching. I, in full disclosure, am a convert to Judaism myself. Although that is not the reason why I developed this interest in this particular topic. In fact, if you would have asked me around the time that I converted myself, I would have been scandalized by this notion, absolutely scandalized. But this vision has been sitting with me for, well, ever since I was a rabbinical student. So the better part of 2 decades. And I'm excited to invite you into a tantalizing and thought-provoking conversation. So I have a source sheet. I will share that in a minute on my screen, but right now I want to see all of your beautiful faces. And I want to ask you to put in the chat when I say, should Jews seek converts? What association do you have with that prompt? Like, is it scary? Does it sound exciting? Does it sound a little mashugana? Does it sound like really not very Jewish at all? Does it sound like something you would be into? Like, among the wide array of responses that you could have to this idea, should Jews seek converts? Should we go out there and recruit some? What are your reactions and responses, and kind of like what's in your kishkas, what's in your gut? So I'm going to pull open the chat as your responses come in. And so Christoph says, Rabbi, honestly, it's a bit of each. Like, there's nothing like a little bit of nuanced ambivalence. And then someone says, not seek, but at least open the door welcomingly. Someone else says, it makes me excited, active, and also a little apprehensive. Great. I say yes, we have this historical aversion to it, but there are loads of people out there who align with Judaism and could find a home here. Oh, that's Micah, Rabbi Micah. Well, you're cheating. Yes. A question comes to mind. Do you mean proselytizing, the P words? It's a case-by-case basis. Sounds like a very different religion that I sort of anti-identify with. Fantastic. So keep those coming, right? Because like, what we will find in our times today together is that the term seeking converts or missionizing or evangelizing, to borrow from our sister religion, Christianity, right, or proselytizing, are very big trigger words. And it's good to address that head on, that those are triggering ideas. But if we actually interrogate and peel away some of those trigger points, a more nuanced picture emerges out of that. And I think like one of the reasons these are trigger words because we as Jews have been and continue to be the subject of other people's proselytizing, right? We have often been, in the worst case scenario, the victims, and in the best case scenario, mildly annoyed when other people try to proselytize us, right? And that is why it's a loaded term and there's apprehension in it. And so we're going to look at what we mean and what we don't mean by should Jews seek converts, and look a little bit about the historical precedents as well. So this is a very big topic, and I have a very big source sheet, and I won't be able to cover everything. But depending on like where the conversation goes, I might either lean more heavily into text or lean more heavily into kind of theology and ideas. We're going to see where it goes. I will start with this. Many of you might know the story about like that every person has to live with two pieces of paper in their pockets, right? Like for me, the world was created in one pocket and I am but dust and ashes in the other pocket. It's a very famous Jewish teaching, right? I live with two texts in my pockets too. I live with the text from Tosafta 13, Sanhedrin 13, which says, the righteous of all the nations shall inherit a share in the world to come. And with the Talmud, Pesachim 87b, which states that Israel was exiled, so righteous proselytes could join them, right? And I live with these two texts in tension, in a beautiful creative tension, because one text says, people are good the way they are. You're good, you're good. You're a Christian, you're a Hindu, you're a Muslim, you're an atheist. God loves you as long as you aspire towards righteousness, and we are not going to coerce you into aligning with Judaism if that's not your speed. But the other text says, well, actually, we can still believe that, but our mission in the world is to spread Judaism and to be, fruitful, to bring in the harvest of new Jews into the world, right? So I really like exploring that tension between these two texts. And I'm going to take a look at some more, chat comments. Seeking is a loaded term for me. Inviting those who are interested or married into Jewish family, be welcoming and open. I think some unfairness regarding converts needs to be cleaned up first. Such as converts are asked to do more than those born Jewish, and some Jewish people aren't as welcoming to converts as they could be. Excellent. That's kind of one of the conclusions of my presentation, Rachel. And I agree that we actually need convert advocacy. There are all kinds of interest groups in the Jewish community that have their own advocacy organizations, right? There are Jews of color and Jews with disabilities and LGBTQ Jews and all of that's great, but we don't have an organization for converts to advocate for our needs. And there's a lot of unexplored need for converts in the Jewish community. If I had more time, I want to start an organization like that myself. I already have a name in mind. I've written a mission statement, but I'm a full-time congregational rabbi. So, but it is something that I am very interested in. Rabbi Micah says, I agree. Some of the challenge surrounding conversion has to do with stigma, and the conclusion isn't to equalize treatment, but to learn how to celebrate conversion. Right? Is the source sheet up? Not yet. Gonna get there. Rachel says, I also wish that there were different categories of membership. Like I'm interested in the Ger Toshav category that could be accepted at synagogues and all other Jewish institutions. Yes, and I think that is actually coming, right? Where non-Jews or Jewish adjacent folks can affiliate with synagogues through these different structures. But I agree that it's something that our community really needs. It is incredibly complicated, though. As a congregational rabbi, we've talked about this in my own congregation, and I'm like, well, what do you do with voting rights? What do you do with serving on board committees? What do you do with serving as committee chairs? What do you do with executive leadership, right? So it's complicated, but it's definitely a conversation we ought to be having. All right. Great. So I'm going to pull up my source sheets. Someone has to fill in Barbie as their picture. I love it. I love to fill in Barbie. I dressed up as to fill in Barbie one Purim when I was a rabbinical student, because as you can tell, I'm kind of blonde, so it worked well, especially with my pink outfit today. Okay, so where is my source sheet? Share. Boom. All right, I hope everyone can see that. And I need to move the bar out of the way. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So I hope you can see that. Should Jews seek converts? Jews don't make converts is an oft repeated refrain. Usually it's seen as a point of pride. In a changing and increasingly open world, is it time for us to be less shy about sharing our path to holiness and wisdom with others? And so when I gave you that initial prompt, it's exactly with like the following questions in mind. What are we talking about here? And what are we not talking about here, right? A gentle, what are we talking about here, right? Some possibilities. A gentle but proactive sharing of Judaism as a legitimate religious path for both Jews and non-Jews. Encouraging deeper thinking about strategies for Jewish growth and development that think outside of the box. A fulfillment of the injunction to be a light unto the nations in a pluralist, non-coercive, and respectful manner. A mission of alignment, not of salvation. And like, I'm going to say a little bit more about that one because it's really foundational to my theology around this issue, because I've built a whole theology around this, that I don't believe that I have a salvific mission to save people's souls, right? Because Judaism actually believes in universal salvation. That is that text from the Tosefta Sanhedrin that I cited. All the nations of the world can have a share in the world to come, right? Meaning that salvation is readily available to any righteous human being by pursuing righteousness, right? So that takes a lot of pressure from me, right? And that's also like taking the sting out. When we think about proselytizing, we think about people basically telling us to go to hell, turn or burn, right? And like it really levels the playing field ontologically, philosophically, theologically. If we just say right off the bat, that is not what this is about. This is not about a salvific mission where I believe that I have the truth and you must adopt it. But I do believe I have a mission, because I think that is where Judaism, contemporary Judaism, falls down a bit. Like we assume that just because we don't have a hard proselytizing mission, that we don't have a mission at all, right? And I could not disagree more with that. I do think we have a mission, right, to be a light unto the nation. And the mission, as I would identify it, is to help people align with Judaism if they are called to align with Judaism. And so I consider my mission to be a mission of alignment. Like I am almost like a gardener. I go out into the fields and I sow some seeds, and some of those seeds germinate into little Jews, and some of those seeds germinate into little Christians and Hindus and Muslims and humanists and whatever. And I'm not responsible for those other flowers, and they're beautiful and I want them in my garden. But I'm responsible for my little Jew flowers and letting them grow and thrive, right? So that is what I mean by alignment, that when I have a seeker inquiry, I sit down with that person and I say, I am going to be the midwife of your soul and help you discern for yourself whether this is the place where you need to be. And if you go take my intro class and you have a great year and you decide it's not for you, that's still a win in my book, because then there is another human being who knows Jews and Judaism in a positive light, and that's part of the mission, right? So for me, it is not a zero-sum game. So the mission of alignment, not of salvation. So obviously, what are we not talking about here? Aggressive, theologically coercive, proselytizing, denying validity of other faiths, Jewish triumphalism and false universalism, or a totalizing universalism. I will say a little bit more about that. Undermining of Jewish ideas of peoplehood and identity, aka the Protestantization of Judaism. And I think that is also like a possibility. Like we're not watering down Judaism here. That's not the idea. In fact, we are just creating more Judaism and more Jews, right? I want to say a little bit about like false particularism or totalizing particularism and totalizing universalism. I have a horseshoe theory of Jewish particularism and universalism that if you go to either extreme, they almost touch, by which I mean that an extremist particularist position basically says no one gets to be like us. And on the other hand, an extremist universalist or totalizing universalist position states everyone must be like us. And the middle ground, even though I do veer more towards the universalist than the particularist, but I think the middle ground, the middle space is saying anyone can be like us if they wish to be, and we are here to help them, right? There is a toxic brand of particularism that can dip into one type of essentialism and supremacy, right? Jews are the chosen people. We're better than other people. We are genetically superior. We have special DNA. We have some special kind of status in the world. I categorically reject that, right? But there's also kind of the false universalism that we have often been the victims of when other religions propagate it, which is turn or burn, you must be like us, or you're invalid, right? And I reject both of those options. I think we are particular people with a universal mission. And that's my story. And I'm kind of sticking to that. Like, it is our mission to do Jewish, to be Jewish, to live within Jewish structures, Jewish patterns, Jewish rituals, Jewish wisdom, Jewish lenses through which we see the world. And we are also not a self-perpetuating machine. We are not just Jewish in the world to be Jewish in the world. We are Jewish in the world because it facilitates our universal mission to be a blessing unto humanity, right? Okay, so then there are the following arguments. Is it good for the Jews? That's always a question Jews love asking other Jews. Is it good for the Jews? Is it a shanda for the Goyim? Is it a shame for Gentiles, for the nations? Like, is this an embarrassment? Bernie Madoff, shanda for the Goyim, right? But is it good for the Jews? So outreach to Jews and conversion of non-Jews are not mutually exclusive. They are two sides of the same coin. If you implement the same strategies to make your communities more open and welcoming, they're going to be more open and welcoming for Jews too, right? Jews need to be welcomed in. Jews need to feel safe. Jews might need tools to learn about Judaism in a non-threatening way, right? So they are not mutually exclusive. They are actually reinforcing goals. There's also the idea of re-energizing our communities, sharing our tradition in a way to re-engage Jews with their own Judaism, because if you have a sense of who you are and what your mission is as a Jew, that enthusiasm is going to rub off onto other Jews, right? That's passion. We need a reason. What is our why? This can give us a why. And this strategy would acknowledge demographic and sociological challenges in the non-Orthodox Jewish community. Like, the more Jews, I want to live in a world with more Jews. I want to imagine a world where we have 50 million Jews. We don't need to imagine a world where we have 2 billion Jews. Hey, if we can jump from 15 million Jews to 20 million Jews, that would be a massive win. If we can jump from 20 million Jews to 50 million Jews, imagine how fruitful our Jewish lives would be with more Jews, right? And then lastly, is it authentically Jewish? Like, this is not Jewish. This is not what Jews do. Well, there's a historical question debated by scholars in what ways and to what extent Jewish populations engaged in missionary activity in late antiquity. And there's kind of like a maximalist view and a minimalist view. I'm not going to go into that because that was basically my rabbinic dissertation. But like, basically, there was certainly in late antiquity a massive openness, if not endorsement, at least within certain communities of seeking converts, right? There's the textual and theological argument. More beloved is the convert to God, right? Then there's the contemporary perspective, which is with the rise of the universalist thrust of early classical Reform Judaism, Reform thinkers about 150 years ago 120 years ago started really grappling with this question, right? And then there's the kind of practical argument, right? And then we're getting really into kind of late 20th and early 20th, 21st century Judaism, thinking about like Alexander Schindler and proactive conversion and audacious hospitality, or whatever different denominations have posited as a way to grow our ranks and be more welcoming. So I am going to stop for a moment here, because the rest of this presentation is actually looking at individual sources. And I want to hear your questions and thoughts and reactions to what we have discussed so far. Just going to scroll through your questions.
I have a question/comment, but if others
Yes.
want to speak, I'm happy to defer to others first. Okay.
I saw your comments, Rabbi Micah, in the chat. Yeah, you might have absorbed that language from when you stayed at my house and I was like talking to you about this. But yes, I'm glad the language is finding its way into the world. So John says, all this begs the question, what does it mean to be Jewish? Orthodoxy is very different from progressive Judaism. You're right. And I think we should not be embarrassed to chart our own course. I think so much, like, we tend to look over our right shoulder in the Jewish world, right? Like, what are the more frum people doing? What are they doing? How can we live up to their standards? Like, the reality is that the Jewish community has never been a unified community. There's never been one Judaism historically, and there certainly isn't now. But I think that non-Orthodox denominations, Reconstructionist, Renewal, Conservative, and Reform, have enough in common to be able to come to enough of a consensus on this issue to have an exciting project for us. We would have had more Jews if there had not been the Holocaust. I think that's true, right? And only now are we kind of recovering to our baseline, right? And like, this is a little bit of a grim joke, but when I was in rabbinical school, I had a rabbi professor, Rabbi Elliot Dorff, very well-known conservative rabbi, an absolute mensch, like a big, lovable mensch. And but he wrote a controversial teshuvah, which said that each Jewish couple should have 4 children, two to replace, to be at replacement rate, 1 to replace the losses of the Holocaust, and 1 to grow the Jewish people. And I have 3 children, and I joked with him, well, I'm 75% there, right? But like, his teshuvah created some amount of guilt among young Jewish families if they didn't meet that criteria of having 4 children. I'm 48. There's not going to be a 4th child, right? That's it. And so I like to counter that, like, my husband's a convert, I'm a convert. Between us, we've added ourselves to the Jewish ranks, and we've given 3 Jewish children to the Jewish people. So, like, I think I've done my part, right? But I also think, like, I'm being a little bit humorous about it, but I think natalism is a philosophically and morally really problematic position, right? We do not get to make decisions in the aggregate about the reproductive choices of individuals, right? The good thing about the proactive conversion frame is that you're basically inviting people into a choice they want to make anyway. You're just making it possible and easier for them. And that removes a lot of pressure, right? So do I think we should replenish our numbers? Yes. But I actually think that this is a less toxic way of doing it than guilting Jews into having Jewish babies, which can easily like spin out of control in all kinds of natalist and essentialist language, which is very, very icky. On the other hand, I don't think this is just about the numbers. The numbers are nice, but I think this is more than just the numbers, right? This is about this position has its own integrity and its own value, whether or not we actually increase our numbers or not, right? So yeah, I think like, I will honestly say, as a conversion rabbi, every time I make a Jew, I imagine my brain like flipping the birds to Adolf Hitler, and I'm from Europe, I'm from the Netherlands, so that feels really direct. I'm from Amsterdam. My city was like traumatized during the Second World War. And so I will say, like, on an emotional level, that's very resonant. Like, haha, I'm growing the Jewish people. Haha, we are not letting Hitler win. But ultimately, I don't think that can be an animating motivation. So I'm just going to scroll through some more comments. Please discuss the unique aspect of Judaism that's not exactly from okay, so I think there's a myth that Judaism is like the only ethno religion out there. We are an ethno religion, and I do not deny the ethnic aspects of Judaism. And as a cultural anthropologist, I actually have a very nuanced understanding of ethnicity, which is actually not about genetics necessarily. It's about heritage, it's about culture, it's about socialization. And I consider myself like an ethnic Jew because I am an Ashkenazi Jew. I live like an Ashkenazi Jew. Are you kidding me? I don't even eat kitniyot on Pesach because I'm a glutton for punishment, right? But like, conversion does not deny the unique features of ethno-religious Judaism or of ethnicity. It just says that we have open borders, right? We have an immigration policy with open borders, right? I also don't think that Judaism is the only ethno-religion. There are many ethno-religions, and some of them are open, like Judaism, some of them are closed, right? But like I think we are kind of like spoiled a little bit by living in a very Protestant world where we assume that all religions are creedal and that Judaism is the only non-creedal religion. But if you actually do a survey of world religions, there are many ethno-religions, just like Judaism. It's not a unique feature, right? But it is something that you have to take account of. You are joining a people, not just a creedal religion. That is absolutely true. What would a conversion advocate do? Right? So like a conversion advocate could like help rabbis, the majority of who are not converts themselves, create better curricula, better processes, better resources, better pastoral training for how to actually engage with converts. There could be resources, programs, conferences, retreats, post-conversion, because converts often fall in a little bit of a black hole after their conversion, so that converts have like a lifetime opportunity to be taken care of in the Jewish community and have their needs met, just like we do the same for queer Jews, right? And like lobbying for the rights and righteous treatment of conversions and converts at all levels in the Jewish world, right? Including in rabbinical schools and making sure it's a proper part of the curriculum, and including denominationally and making sure that we have enough representation. Like, don't create the Jewish equivalent of manels where there are only born Jews on a panel. Have a convert on the panel, right? Like the options are really limitless in that sense. Okay. I am Orthodox, but enjoy learning and attending Laasok classes. Herb Schkoyer, thank you. Right? And like, I think we can hold on to the integrity of each of our positions. Someone wants to know whether they can get in touch with me via email. Rabbi Micah, can you put my work email address in the chat? rabbi@agudasachimic.org. Absolutely. I have a Substack, where my sermons go to die. I have a YouTube channel called A Small Sanctuary with Rabbi Esther, and I'm on Instagram, which is mainly an advertising channel for the YouTube channel with at the Rabbi Esther, because Rabbi Esther was taken. So I am very humbly proclaiming that I'm the one and only the Rabbi Esther. There we go. There we go. There's so much Jew against Jew. Ugh, Vicky, I feel your pain. And I will say that like I was very passionate about this topic before October 7th. And my own struggles after October 7th have impacted how I teach this material now. I think like there's a rupture in the Jewish community that we need to address and that we need to be honest about. And like I am kind of synthesizing in real time what that means for this project. But yes, like there is a lot of Jew on Jew conflict. Christo Cheney, Caleb Daniel says, people so often don't realize how much it takes to raise a single person from birth to independence. So I don't think that having more babies is the only valid answer. Yes, and that is actually analogous to the immigration discourse. Like I'm an immigrant to the United States, right? The United States did not invest a single penny in me, not in my education, not in my physical growing, not in my schooling, not in my employment history, not in my healthcare. And yet I came to America's shores and I became a taxpayer. I am a net contributor, and converts are net contributors. And it's actually, from a kind of a communal perspective, much cheaper to make converts than it is to raise Jewish babies from scratch, where you don't even have a guarantee that they'll stay Jewish and stay Jewishly engaged, right? I hate to be so mercenary about it, but you can totally make that argument. Aviva has raised her hand. Aviva, go for it.
I was just going to say about staying Jewishly engaged, because I have two Jewish daughters and only one of them stays active in Jewish pursuits. One of them wants nothing to do with Judaism anymore. So, and similarly, my sister and I were the same way. My sister decided before her bat mitzvah that she wanted nothing to do with Judaism and nothing to do with religious school anymore. And I've gone on to have two daughters teach at Hebrew school and blah, blah, blah.
And I think that the conversionary framework can actually relieve some of the pressure that born Jews feel when it comes to the continuity discourse, right? Because if you take a step back and you relax into the position where you say, you know what, Judaism is not for everyone, but a lot of people are going to find their way back into Judaism. Maybe I need to freak out a little less about the continuity discourse, right? There's still, of course, the individual pain, right? Aviva, I want to acknowledge that, like, there's sadness when one child, like, stays connected and another doesn't. And, when you see that reflected across the generations, but like, that pain is amplified because we're so stressed about it. We treat Jewish demographics like a zero-sum game. I'm like, are you kidding? We're like 0.02% of the world population. We haven't even scratched the surface of our potential yet. So why is natalist a bad word? Because it takes away agency from people to make their own reproductive choices for a political purpose, essentially. And that tends to affect those of us who have a uterus. So Rabbi Micah Streifer says, when you talk about what's Jewishly authentic, how do you differentiate from things that are just aesthetic choices by Jews? Jews don't eat mayonnaise. Jews don't use the word faith. Jews don't like to talk about God. Some of those masquerade as religious issues, but are actually very surface level. Yes, exactly. The example I'd love to use, and this is very paradoxical. Did you know? Oh, it's Jews don't proselytize, right? Jews don't proselytize. Who invented the word proselyte? Who invented the word proselyte? We did. Proselytos. I hope I'm getting my Greek pronunciation right here. Proselytos is the Septuagint translation of the word ger, convert. You were the first, I mean, I wouldn't say we are the first to proselytize, but like that verb to proselytize comes from a reality where Jews proselytized. And it's, not all proselytisms are created equal, right? In rabbinic literature, we still talk about proselytes. When rabbis get together and we organize like a central Beit Din, we might still like, oh, how many proselytes do you have on your list? Oh, okay, I've got 3, I've got 5, great, right? We use that terminology still, right? I'm a proselyte, like I was, I also think that we have a particular toxic model of what proselytism is, but proselytism in its academic understanding, not in its colloquial understanding where like people knock on your door at dinner time and tell you you're going to burn in hell, which everyone hates. Proselytism is just religious switching. That's all it means. Someone moves from one religious culture into another religious culture, right? That's all it means, right? But like it points towards what you're identifying, Rabbi Micah, which is that like, you know, Jews don't do this, right? Like the word faith, it's so, like, or God's love. You know, I remember I was teaching a class years ago as a fairly new rabbi on Jewish prayer, and I was talking about God's love. And this congregant turned around to me and said, Rabbi, you sound so Christian. And there was a little bit of a bias because I was the convert rabbi, the blonde convert rabbi, and he was a little bit of a schmuck. He's not in my congregation anymore, right? And just not part of this congregation I serve. Just to be clear, because this is going on YouTube, this person was not part of my current congregation. Agudas Achim, I love you. All right. But he was, you know, he had some biases about converts, right? And I said, like, have you seen the Ahava Rabbah? Have you seen Ahavat Olam? Have you seen literally this place in Jewish liturgy, this place, this place? God loves you, God loves you, God loves you, God loves you, God is merciful, God is compassionate, God is filled with loving kindness. It's all over our liturgy, right? It's just how you choose to see, right, that liturgy. What lens do you use? And I do think that we, as Jews, are so busy defining ourselves against other people that we are less successful in defining ourselves for who we are intrinsically, right? And I think that's also what this project is about. This makes us stronger in ourselves. I can't believe I just called someone a schmuck on the internet, but I did, right? Rabbi Micah, you can edit that out, right? We'll see. Okay, great. So more. Oh, Herb. Yes. So an important aspect and difference in Orthodox conversion is that the convert must commit to being observant. Please comment on this. So in theory, I do not object to that at all, right? In theory, I would like my converts to be observant too, right? I actually was having this conversation not so long ago with someone on Facebook. It's like, what are your objections to Orthodox conversion? Are your objections to Orthodox conversion that we have standards for our converts? Like, no, I have standards for my converts too. There are different standards. I will acknowledge that, right? And I have textual reasons for why I hold by the standards that I do. But like, it's not that I object to converts having to work hard for their conversion in Orthodox Judaism, right? It's the hypocrisy that those standards are not put on Jewish unborn Jews, right? And that this actually leads to like a skewed reality where the convert in more traditional spaces is often policed and often in not very pastoral ways and feels like they have to meet a very high standard while the born Jew can park around the back, right?
Yeah.
So, and like, of course, we don't live in a coercive religious culture, right? Like we live in an open world. I don't think anyone should be coerced into observing Torah, right? And so I find it more philosophically cogent to lower my standards for conversion, to bring them in alignment with what my other Jews do, because it saves me from that hypocrisy. And I will also intellectually, honestly admit that yes, like we have a lower level of observance in liberal Judaism. But like I am a maximalist when it comes to observance. I think you should observe whatever you're able to observe and you should do it with joy and thoughtfulness. But I think that is more of an invitation that I set for people rather than an expectation, right? There is a minimum. Of course, there is a minimum, right? But I like to frame it more through invitation rather than an expectation, because the hypocrisy of like, you convert need to be absolutely Shomer Shabbos. And I've heard horror stories of rabbis going through the trash of their prospective Orthodox converts to look at the wrappers of the products that they were using to see if they were keeping kosher adequately, right? There's real abuse, right, among converts, also in the non-Orthodox world, right? But there is also abuse in the Orthodox world because people are trying to meet these stringent criteria, right? And that is not like inherent to Orthodox Judaism, but I do think that the power differential makes it easier for abuse to creep in, because that's what power differentials do, right?
I have a further
Yeah.
comment further down. We were talking about this, Rabbi Micah, too. And also in Israel, it's a big problem because the rabbinate is supervising the. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Herb, you're completely right. It's a huge problem. And it actually kind of violates like the beautiful tenets of Orthodox Judaism, right? Like religion and politics and power. It's one heck of a combination. It's really hard, you know? But yes, Herb, I'm so glad you're with us. Thank you for being here, you know? Okay. Seems that converts are not really cheaper, but more affordable. And I want to make a Jewish joke about I do wholesale, not retail, but all right. Rabbi Micah will never invite me back at this rate. Okay. We are at such a tiny population in the world and we get blamed. I know. Like, I want to say, hey, anti-Semites, have you ever sat in on a synagogue board meeting? You think we control the world? Can't even control our own synagogue finances, crying out loud. But like on a more serious note, right? This mission would also help demystify what Judaism is. When there is a vacuum and people get to project their ill conceptions on Jews because we are not meeting the moment of filling the vacuum, that's what's going to happen. The more people know us, the more you can dispel anti-Semitism. And I'd like to see that, like, a mission-driven Judaism is a shot in the arm. It's a vaccine against anti-Semitism, especially if you explain it thoughtfully, right? Because you're basically saying we're not some super secret little club of super special people that you don't get to join. We are open, we are transparent. You're welcome to explore. You're welcome to consider. And if you don't want to consider us, that's cool too, right? So I actually think it can help lower the temperature. If proselytism is done badly, well, then we're just joining the other big religions and messing it up, right? There's a cautionary tale in that too. But like, I think we're more likely at this moment in time to err on the side of not engaging conversion at all than we are in like over engaging conversion. But there is a warning on the other side too. In a hypothetical world, there are a million scenarios I could imagine where, you know, it could not work out well, right? Okay, we certainly got the quality over quantity. And now I improve the quantity of our quality. I love that. That's really great. I know. We get some good people. Scripture is another word. Yep, Jewish, but yes. All right, paradigmatic proselytes. With the part before the colon, let me see, of the thesis. Oh, wow. Okay. Hey, Rebecca Boggs, so nice to see you here. Thanks for leaving a little alliteration in the chat. John, it's my understanding that one time in one time in history, Judaism was just as proselytic as other religions and it became dangerous. There is a kernel of truth in that. There was an edict of Constantine in the 3rd or 4th century, it was in the 300s, that outlawed Jewish proselytism on pain of death for both the proselyte and the person converting them. Yes, this was a big, big impact. Also, the religious behavior of converts is in contrast to born Jews, right? Yeah. If they're not observant to the same degree, yeah. You know, Herb, you know how I solved that problem? You know, after having like been Jewish for a few years and getting sick of like, oh my God, you're so much more observant than the other Jews. You must be a convert. I solved it by becoming a rabbi because now no one complains about my level of observance. So just a little hack there for the converts among you. I would suggest, Rabbi Micah here, that observant has a different meaning in Reform Judaism. Yes, I absolutely agree. That would be a different class. I want to note, right, that like there are many axes on which you can plot observance or serious and meaningful engagement with Judaism, right? There's the halachic axis, and then there are many other axes, right? So I appreciate that. Hypocrisy is running wild these days in our world of Judaism. Oh gosh, yeah, really, I know. Tell me, so much of it. It's really trending right now. Hashtag be a hypocrite. Hashtag be fashionable. Then Herb says we are a minority, but remember we were enslaved in Egypt, and we become the multitude promised. Yes, and also, Herb, who came out of Egypt with us? And what percentage of the population that came out of Egypt? 1/5 of the people who came out of Egypt in the Exodus were converts. We tend to gloss over that, right? Okay. Oh my gosh, I haven't even gotten to the core of my source sheet yet. So thank you for this. We're going to pick a few sources, right? So like one source I just want to quickly deal with is, am I sharing my screen?
You're not right now, no.
Oh gosh, I just pulled up the source for myself. That was really silly. Yes. Click share. Boom. There we go. All right, let's go. I want to share this source, bust some myths, with Ruth Rabbah. This is the Midrash on the book of Ruth, and it is actually our source of the idea of turning away the convert 3 times. This is like something that like is really mimetic in our communities, but we're supposed to turn a convert away 3 times and blah, 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 blah. Yes, that is a source. It's only one source, and it's a very specific source. So let's look at this source, right? So Ruth says, you know, and to Naomi that she wants to stay with Naomi. And Naomi says, turn back, my daughters, go, as I'm too old to be with a husband. If I were to say I have hope, even if I were with a husband tonight, and also to bear sons, right? So like, oh no, wait, did I get... Oh, I think I accidentally deleted the part that was relevant. Oh, here. No, here it is. Sorry. Turn back, my daughters, go. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Rabbi Yehudan bar Rabbi Hanina. I'm sure that is a typo. Should probably be Yehuda. In 3 places this is written here, right? So that's where we get the number 3 from. Turn back, Ruth 1:8. Turn back, Ruth 1:11. Turn back, Ruth 1:12, corresponding to the 3 times that one rejects a convert. Aha, this is very specific to the book of Ruth. If he insists beyond that, one accepts him. Rabbi Yitzchak said, a stranger shall not stay the night overnight outside, right? And they bring these other texts, right? So basically, yes, turn back for Ruth's own protection. Not out of prejudice, not out of exclusion. Naomi was saying, turn back, I don't want to inflict this upon you, which is very different framing from you're not good enough for us and we're going to reject you. So we have put that myth to bed. Then I want to bring in another Megillah, an unexpected text from Megillat Esther, which is often kind of overlooked when we look at the Purim story during Purim because we focus on the Haman aspect of the story. But basically, after Haman meets his dismal end and the Jews triumph, this is close to the end of the Megillah. This is close towards the end of chapter 8. This is what it says. And in every province and in every city, when the king's command and decree arrived, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday. And many of the people of the land professed to be Jews, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. So like, this is mythical, right? There was no historical evidence of the book of Esther. But in the Jewish self-imagination, this was kind of aggressive proselytism, right? Ki nafal pachad Yehudim aleihem, because they were afraid, right? And they meet Yahadim. They even talked to Jewify yourself. All right, that is how they conjugate the verb. And Rashi is very clear. Meet Yahadim, meet Gayarim, means converting to Judaism, right? So like, wow. Now that is not a model I propose. Let's like go through social upheaval and then terrorize our neighbors and convert them to Judaism. In fact, the Talmud really says like this is actually a bad model of conversion. No one should convert out of fear. But the idea that like Jews would never do such things, the book of Esther gives us a different model, and we actually do have, albeit debated, historical record of the Hasmoneans engaging in the forced proselytism of the Idumeans, right? Like basically convert or die, right? Again, terrible toxic model, big no, no, no from me. But like it's helpful to sometimes expand our imagination of historically of what Jews did, including the bad things that Jews did, right? Okay, now then there's the prophetic literature. These are all like the very famous texts of like, I will bring up the nations to my holy mountain in Jerusalem, and I will select some of them to be priests and Levites. And I think that is really salient, right? Like this is not just about like tourists going to the Temple Mount in the eschaton and being like, hey, Judaism is nice. That's nice, right? We're inspired by this. No, these people were integrated into the highest offices, right? In the prophetic imagination of even becoming priests and Levites, which you can't do halachically, right? But it just goes to show that you can be very expansive in your imagination of what it means to grow the Jewish people, right? I'm going to go real quick over this midrash. A proselyte is more precious in the sight of the Holy One, blessed be he. So if you converted, put that one in your pocket and feel good about yourself, right? And then there is this text from the Bavli, from Pesachim, which is kind of like my signature text, right? This is the salient part. The Holy One of Blessing only exiled Israel among the nations in order that proselytes might join them. For as it is said, and I will sow her unto me in the land. Surely a man sows a se'ah, a small measure, in order to harvest many kor'in, large measures, right? So that is like, we're supposed to grow the Jewish people. Like our diaspora has a purpose and a mission. And we do not only have to be distrustful of those who are not like us. We can see them as opportunities and as moments of really beautiful spiritual engagement. So I really love this text. Then there are some texts about how Abraham and Sarah proselytized, essentially. I'm not going to go into this. It's Breshit Rabbah, but it's like, a super helpful text. Like, this is kind of part of the Abrahamic mission. Like, how did Abraham grow his Jewish community? Well, he only had 2 kids initially. So, clearly it wasn't through the natalist position, right? And then there's just something from the Rambam, the Sefer HaMitzvot, about loving the convert, right? Now, we're going to jump 2,000 years into the future, i.e. into our contemporary modern era, and look at like what classical reform does, right? So there tends to be a trend that as soon as Jews feel safe, we start thinking about our mission. And as soon as Jews feel imperiled, we close the gates. And like that has always been my hypothesis. And I've seen that happen again after October 7th, right? Like the conversation that we were having about conversion in the Jewish community prior to October 7th was qualitatively different to the one we are having now, right? Which is not to say that all is lost, but that there has been a shift. So like as Jews encountered modernity and emancipation, the idea of seeking converts did not stay behind all that long. So Rabbi Kaufman Kohler, who was kind of a Victorian era rabbi, right, has a drash on this Pesachim text right here, right? Thus, the leaders of progressive Judaism also have stepped out into the dark prison walls of the Talmudic ghetto. I mean, that's a swipe. He's a classical reform rabbi, but whatever. We'll forgive him for that. And reasserted the humanitarian principles of the founders of the synagogue, who welcomed the proselytes into Israel and introduced special blessings for them into the liturgy. He's talking about the weekday Amidah. They declare again with the author of Psalm, whatever that is in Roman numerals, I don't have the brain power to convert that real quick, that Zion, that Zion is the city of God, should be not a national center of Israel, but the metropolis of humanity, because Judaism is destined to be a universal religion. Not that Judaism is to follow the proselytizing methods of the church, which aims to capture souls by wholesale conversion without the due regard for the attitude and conviction of the individuals, but we can no longer afford to shut the gate to those who wish to enter, impelled by conviction or other motives, having a religious bearing, even though they do not conform to the Talmudic law, right? So you can see that this idea kind of pops up. So like I stand in the tradition of 150 years of Jews asking themselves this question of whether we should seek proselytes. Okay, pushing on real quick. Contemporary perspectives, 1949, Rabbi Leo Beck, my personal hero, an amazing rabbi, a moral giant, he wrote only a few years after the Shoah, which really blows my mind, of his spiritual stature. He wrote, mankind is hungry and thirsty for that which Judaism can say, what Jews full of Judaism can say. Should we not send out missionaries to Asia and to other places, to the people there waiting for us? We are in need of expansion for our own sake. Our destiny puts this question. There is an old story in the Talmud that the sanctuary was destroyed by reason of the little-minded people. We must begin to hold the great ideas. We should understand what the present time speaks to us, what it asks from us. The mission of Judaism, 1949, right? Then we have Alexander Schindler in 1978. Unabashedly and urgently, I call on our members to resume their time-honored vocation and to become champions for Judaism. While Reform Judaism has, after much soul-searching, affirmed the desirability of outreach to non-Jews with the hope of attracting them to Judaism, these efforts are restricted to unchurched Gentiles, right? Again, with the acknowledgement, this is not about salvation, right? This is not about stealing people away from the religions they are happy in, but that in a secularizing world, we now have options to offer our wisdom. Then I'm going to skip over the next one. Harold Schulweis, Rabbi Harold Schulweis, right? A conservative rabbi, wrote in the early 21st century, conversion to Judaism is not for the sake of the survival of the group or for ethnic comfort. Genuine conversion affects the native born and the Jew by choice. Conversion means that Judaism is not genes and chromosomes, but a free, reasoned, and passionate choice. Jewish mission does not mean denigration of other religions or the vulgar promotion of evangelical enthusiasm. Jewish mission means that we act out our belief that far from being a parochial, sectarian, ethnic clan, we, a people whose faith and wisdom and ethics has endured for millennia. So, Gary Tobin, I'm going to skip over him. He wrote a book. He's not a rabbi. He wrote an amazing book dedicated to this entire topic called Opening the Gates, How Proactive Conversion Can Revitalize the Jewish Community, right? He writes, I see millions of Jewish lives unrealized. This seems to me an individual and communal shame. And then there's Rabbi Rick Jacobs, right, in 2017, right? So I have more data on demographics, and I'm going to not do that, right? Pew Report data and things like that. But basically, right, it is alleged that 1 in 6 of American Jews is a convert. I don't know how certain that data holds up, but there are about 1 million Jews by choice in the American Jewish community, right? This is like a huge untapped potential that needs representation, right? There's all kinds of interesting discourse that we don't have time for today, but I just, we touched on some of it already, right? And then I want to talk a little bit about best practices, right? creating digital learning opportunities, convert cohorts, advocacy and representation, a Born Jew Convert Alliance, training of para-rabbis and emissaries to support emerging Jewish populations and revitalize small community life, synagogue seeding, development of ethical codes and sensibilities, and training of both lay and ordained conversion specialists, communal-wide strategic plans for welcoming and integrating converts. Whew! Friends, and with that, that is my presentation. Any final comments or thoughts?
Quick ones, folks, because we are 1 minute over our time.
Rabbi, in case you didn't see the chat for the Roman numerals, I think that's 87 for the Roman
Thank
numerals.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I'll
Thank
just
you.
point out Christo's other comment, which is more please. I want to thank you, Rabbi Hugenholtz, for sharing this whirlwind of thinking with us, both your original thoughts as well as these texts, which support a much more open, much more inclusive approach to welcoming people who choose Judaism. Rabbi, do you want to make a last comment and then I'll close us up?
Well, this was really great. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to re-engage with something that I'm excited about. I guess my main takeaway is that we're living in a really dark and difficult world. And like some of us as Jews feel really threatened by what's happening in the outside world. And some of us as Jews feel really ashamed of what Jews are doing in the world, right? And both are really emotionally unsustainable positions to hold, right? Like, yes, we have our own journey to do of reckoning about who we are as a Jewish people. And I certainly wouldn't want to promote this without like great moral and spiritual humility about the current moment that we live in. But I think that it's powerful for us to think positively, right? To like, this is not the first crisis that Judaism has faced, right? We have gone through many crashes, right? To cite Rabbi Benay Lapé, right? We've had many crashes, and we're in the middle of one of those crashes. But like to still think of Judaism positively and as a values proposition can only bring balm to our own Jewish souls, right? Whether you're born Jew or convert or exploring conversion, like this is such a healing modality for all of us. And when I started generating these thoughts, Judaism was not in crisis. When I look back at the time span that I've been engaging in, that was probably some of the most positive Jewish years in all of Jewish history. We were lucky to have had those years. Right now, we're in a different space, but this is now a healing modality for that space. I am not sure if I always believe that, right? I'm just a human being. I have the feelings and emotions of a human being, but I think it's worth for me to explore grabbing that and believing it because the only way is through. And this gives us a way to be expansive, to be generous of heart, to be confident, to fall in love with our own tradition, to fall in love with who we are, to have respect and love and compassion for other human beings, to engage with the rest of the world, to not see the rest of the world as our enemies, but as our allies and our friends, and potentially as part of us, right? So this is a healing theology. This is a healing vision. And so I hope that it brings you love and healing and connection and goodness of all that we are called to be as Jews. So I will close with that, Rabbi Micah, and thank you for all of you for being part of this. 18 people. I am so honored. I'm really verklempt that you came, and I'm really, really grateful. Thank you for blessing my soul today.
So again, a huge thank you to Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz for this. We could have gone another hour. I think there was so much to talk about. And I'm grateful to all of you for being here for this, well, let's call it beginning of this conversation, because I think we have more to talk about. Wishing you all a Chag Shavuot Sameach. May we have a peaceful and joyous and sweet festival of Torah coming up tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.